Hey everyone, welcome and thanks for joining Agritech's Travel-Free Digital Conference. My name is Jeffrey Landau and I am the Director of Business Development here at Agritech. With me today is Andrew Carter, co-founder and CEO of Smallhold. Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Thanks for having us.
Not a problem. Glad we could take the time. So Andrew, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you share your screen and have a little presentation. Sound good?
Cool. Sounds great. So as Jeffrey so kindly introduced, we're Smallhold. We're based in Brooklyn, New York. We're a pretty advanced mushroom farm and distributed farming company that's figuring out new ways of growing food in urban areas like New York City. It's definitely an interesting time to be doing this. In all honesty, we kind of created this company to respond to situations not unlike this. It's the time when we need resilient agriculture, we need creative ways of growing food, and though it's definitely a difficult time, it's definitely a very interesting time to be growing food in New York City. So a lot of this stuff kind of evolves, these presentations and how we present ourselves. But in all reality, it's kind of just we're continuing on and doing what we do through this whole thing. What we're at its base level, we're a mushroom farm. But what we've done is invented proprietary supply chain and technology that allows us to grow in different kinds of environments that wouldn't normally have a farm or to be producing food. When you're looking in a city, there's not huge swaths of land that you can build a big mushroom facility, or you can build a larger outdoor farm. And so operations like ourselves and others in our space have figured out new ways of just cramming different food production facilities throughout the city. But what we're trying to do is develop a network that can be distributed throughout the planet. New York isn't the only city that has these issues, and the more people that are living in urban environments are requiring this kind of food. So we're figuring out new ways of doing that. This is a story that a lot of people understand that are probably watching this, especially in the U.S. This is not only a U.S. problem, but it's very prevalent here. That food distribution is just really wild. We're shipping food across the country that shouldn't really be shipped across the country. We have really crazy cold chain and supply chain issues that are being tested right now throughout this crisis. And you're having food that goes bad before it even gets to the consumer. That makes you lose quality, that makes you lose nutrition, and just general enjoyment decreases with every mile that food travels. And so we're trying to figure out a new way to not ship dead produce, but ship living produce to the consumers. So when you're thinking about mushrooms, it's not unlike any other kind of produce. Generally, it's grown in large facilities. They're over the country. There's centralized location of them in Pennsylvania, but they also have them in California and Canada and Mexico. Very similar to kind of greenhouse stuff that's going on. But they're harvested, put in some packing house, usually packed out to a distributor. Then that goes to another distributor, and eventually it gets to the shelf over a week after it's been harvested. Generally, all these mushrooms are actually that you're eating it before a week. So usually when people are eating some packaged mushroom, especially if it's canned, it's just not the most enjoyable experience. And we have to figure out new ways of doing that so people are eating a better quality product. And so as a lot of these people know, we're creating a lot of waste when we're trying to ship this product. Because the food goes bad on the shelf or the food goes bad in distribution, a lot of this food is thrown away. And though there are some benefits of supply chain and how we do grow and sell produce throughout the country, we do have a huge food waste issue. And that's only being, again, stress test with the coronavirus and COVID-19 issue that we have right now. We have food that is grown on farms that have laborers that are don't really want to go into work. You have some food traveling through multiple urban environments that have different regulation around them. It only, further shows that we need a better way of growing food closer to the consumers. Food is huge. Again, if you're watching this, you're probably interested in food production. It's one of the biggest markets in the world. Everyone eats. But, as even before this issue, local food has been in massive demand. People find it in different ways. It ranges from 50 to 500 miles from a consumer. But in general, people really want food that's fresh and that's grown near them. In our opinion, that's only going to grow. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty around what the food system, how the food system is reacting. Some people think the supply chain is fine. Some people think it's a house of cards. But in general, we think that by having food production as much as possible near the consumer, you have a more resilient system. And that's being further proved by us, as our demand increases through this crazy scenario. And so we developed a network of different farms that we're distributing throughout the city. The first piece of this is what we call the Smallhold Mini Farm. If you guys look us up, or if you look at us on Instagram, you'll probably see a lot of these. These are proprietary systems that we install all over the place in New York. We have them in Whole Foods, we have them in restaurants. They run off of a system that we developed in-house. It's connected to 4G. It pushes over 60,000 data points per day. Each shelf is independently controlled. Humidity, temperature, airflow, everything necessary to grow the best mushrooms possible. These systems are pretty high tech, but we also have to follow a bunch of protocol when we do service these and we do manage them. Our operation is USDA organic, and everything is certified GAP. So once you're in our network and you're growing with us, you're actually under an umbrella of services as well. Systems, it gets pushed to our cloud system, and so we have just millions and millions and millions of data points for each mushroom that we're growing. It educates us and allows us the best parameters possible. Generally, we're like 20 to 30% higher yield per block than industry average, which is pretty good for a young company. But as we grow and as we put out more mini farms, this just continues to grow, and our data set becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, which just makes it more and more exciting to expand this network and to continue to grow. But you can go see it yourself, honestly. Even right now, during this crisis, you can go to Whole Foods Gowanus, and you can see them growing their own mushrooms. Those mushrooms are for sale in the produce aisle. This unit's growing right now, it's around 70 or 80 pounds per week. How we work is it kind of depends on, we work with their demand and we grow whatever they need on site. They're growing mainly oyster mushrooms, but we offer 10 different varieties of mushrooms that they can grow. But we have these all over the place. A few of these are in restaurants, so you can't go visit those for a little bit, but all of our customers are planning on reopening as soon as this thing is over. So I'm sure they would love to have you and serve you some mushrooms once we're out of this quarantine situation. Just to kind of go through a few of these varieties that we grow so you can kind of understand, we don't grow button mushrooms, but we do grow a lot of oysters. We grow pink oysters, we grow lion's mane, we grow maitake, we grow shiitake, we grow pio mushrooms. Really any kind of specialty mushroom that you can grow, we grow and we offer to our customers. Just really quickly, this is obviously, it can be kind of complicated when you're dealing with supply chain, but a lot of people ask questions about this. our units themselves are part of a larger network. We pre-grow all of the substrates off-site. Those are delivered on-site, and then those are put into our unit, and those take about a week to grow out. Each bag, once it's in that unit, is ready to harvest within 7 days. That's really fast. Like, you can essentially watch it grow if you were sitting in quarantine and just looking at one of these things. So it's just a different kind of ball game when you're talking about mushrooms versus other types of crops. That's very helpful for us because we can really make an impact with the small square footage that we're offered. But it also just means that we can grow just a lot of food in the city and a lot of calories and actually make an impact on people's diets. And that's very exciting for us. And so that process that we were talking about earlier, where you have a week or two before it gets to the consumer, once it's harvested, it's on the shelf. And so you're buying produce that was harvested within hours rather than within weeks. This is a completely different experience for produce. And we really want this to not only be with mushrooms, but be with all sorts of produce in the future. We have a lot of different customers. We're based in New York. We have some really cool expansion plans that you guys will be hearing about over the next year. But you can find us at Whole Foods. You can actually buy our produce on Amazon as well. But if you go to WeWork, Standard, Lower East Side Girls Club, Masenyaki, Bunker, you can go to all these sorts of places when they're open again. But a lot of these you can actually order food from if you're just sitting around. Bunker Vietnamese is our first customer. They're still growing and selling mushrooms for delivery, and so I would definitely go and order some of their vegan pho if you are hungry tonight. But you can look us up. Please check us out if you want to read more about it. Just look us up on Google News. You can find a lot more description of what we're doing. It's definitely more than can be covered in a 10 to 15 minute presentation. So we'd love to tell more about our story. And so by doing this, we're using other people's footprint. We're being creative about how we use real estate and how we use their supply chain. And it's making it so we can build one of the biggest farms in the world without owning a single acre. The mini farm is only one part of the puzzle. We have some really cool operations that we're opening up for the next few months that are not only on site, but really interesting applications of our technology that we'll be able to tell you more about into the summer. But luckily, I think that we'll talk about in the question and answer, we can continue on through this whole thing. People need healthy food, people need safe food, and people need local food, and we're here growing it. And so we're continuing on and providing that service to the community. So thank you. That's all I got for now. And Jeffrey's back.
Awesome, Andrew. Well, excellent presentation.
I think you're muted. Here you go.
Can you hear me now?
Or I think we're good. Maybe that was my speakers. Sorry.
All right. Well, Andrew, excellent presentation. A lot to break down there. I think the first question I want to ask you, because maybe not everyone listening or watching is aware of this, but what is the growing cycle or process of a mushroom?
Sure. I can actually show. So am I full screen now?
You're still full screen?
My face, my camera. I have a mushroom bag, and I can explain it if you guys look at me. Okay, so this is a good example, right? So this bag is ready to fruit. Okay, so what we're growing are called saprotrophic mushrooms. They're digester mushrooms, and so any cultivatable mushroom, for the most part, is a type of mushroom that digests a material, and so what's in this bag was originally just sawdust mixed with rye berries and wheat bran. It's all, again, USDA organic, but a bunch of natural materials. It's hydrated and then sterilized, so you're not growing anything else in there. and then inoculated, which is essentially seeded with a little bit of this mycelium. And so this white stuff that's all inside of here was originally just a little tiny piece of it. And what it is this it's actually the living organism that grows the mushroom, and it slowly expands and then digests this substrate, and it's releasing enzymes and creating its carbohydrates and its energy out of the actual the substrate. And so that takes about 3 or 4 weeks for that little tiny piece to turn into this big mass of mycelium. And at this point, it's pretty much like, okay, I ate all the food. I'm ready to fruit right now. And what you'll do is you'll poke some holes into this and expose it to a new environment. That environment can be on your counter, it can be in the woods, it can be in all sorts of different places, and the mushroom might grow in that. But to grow it commercially and to grow it like a significant amount reliably, you need a pretty controlled environment, which is what's in our fruiting chambers. But generally, it needs really high humidity. It needs a lot of airflow. The mushrooms themselves are actually kind of like animals, I would say, in that they're digesting like us. They respire, so they breathe in oxygen and they release CO2, and they need that air so they don't actually strangle themselves if they're producing too much CO2. And so if you're growing at home or something, usually you don't have a CO2 issue. But if you're growing a mass amount in a small space, it's actually a big thing to manage when you're trying to manage your climate and do all that kind of stuff.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it sounds like you guys have nailed down the controlled environment part and have really created this large network of not machines, but of, I guess, grow chambers that really help answer this distribution problem. And from what I've been reading, given the current crisis, is that there isn't really a supply problem in the industry with food and agriculture, but it's really about these bottlenecks in supply chain as it relates to distribution of product. So from your experience, what do you think are some key lessons learned throughout this entire corona pandemic that I think would help inform policymakers or leaders in the space on how to avoid problems like this in the future?
Yeah, I mean it's tough, and we're in like week 1.5 or 2. I got week, I
It
don't know
feels like a
what
month.
feels like forever. But and so this opinion could totally change within the
Hmm.
next few days. But what we're finding is, and part of it's just because we're a small company, we can be pretty nimble, in that the demand hasn't changed. It's actually only increased for us. Like people want mushrooms, people want to be healthy. Everyone's like running around in the park and stuff, and people want to cook at home. And I don't. I've read that there's more meat sales and stuff because people are stocking up, but I still think that there's still a pretty good trend towards vegetarian veganism, and
Hmm.
so more people want our mushrooms. But the issue is just connecting our mushrooms to the customer, and so our original vehicle was grow and sell inside restaurants and grocery stores. Overnight, the restaurants were like, okay, like half of them are trying to do delivery, but half of them are like, okay, we're just not buying anything for a while, so just like let's pause. And so we were able to just be like, okay, let's figure out how to grow and sell to directly to the consumer, set up some pop-ups, go sell directly, do home delivery, do all these different things. Because as you kind of said, like this, it's not really the farming issue, and it's not really a consumer issue. It's just more that like the path to the consumer has gotten
Hmm.
completely shaken up.
The farm is thousands of miles away, but the consumers are all in one central location in these cities. So, we've
Yeah,
created this supply chain that, when cities shut down, when there's no movement, what do you do?
yeah,
Where do you go to eat? And I think it's been really interesting to see how cities have been responding, but also, how a small business owner like you have been responding to this. I've seen on your social media you guys are doing these pop-ups trying to really access and go direct to consumer. Can you share a bit more about how that came to be and what you're learning through this pivot?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it a pivot quite yet.
Short-term pivot.
let's just say let's just say it's kind of like it's an interesting, it's a temporary test. Like we,
Hmm.
as a small company, everyone should be just testing stuff constantly and seeing what works and what doesn't. And this is a really big test. But what essentially happened was kind of what I said. It's like literally we got. I mean, we knew this stuff was kind of happening because we've been paying attention to like the global news. But then it was like one night, it was like no one was going to go to restaurants, and then we talked to all of our customers, and some of them are optimistic, some of them are pessimistic. Some of them think they're opening in April, some of them think they're opening in August.
Hmm.
And so either way, like we knew that we had to do something because we like there are a lot of companies who are just kind of like shutting down for temporarily or permanently, but hopefully temporarily, and then just trying to start back up when they're in the clear. And this makes a little more sense, but I don't think that really makes sense for us.
Hmm.
People want to eat. Like this is the time to grow and sell food. And so we just sat there and we're like, okay, what do we do right now? We have this van. We have all the certifications necessary to go do what we want to do. And so let's go set up. And I mean, how it really happened was we're friends with the Meat Hook, which is a local business here. A very they're a really great group if you're not familiar of them, but they I know you are, Jeffrey, but the public, the general
The general public.
who's watching this. But they've been helping all these local producers and local food manufacturers because they're an essential business. Agriculture is an essential business. We're allowed to continue on when other people are asked to stay at home. And we just sat there and we're like, okay, so how do we make people comfortable? How do we make sure we're following more rules than the CDC is kind of setting out? And so when you come to our pop-up, you'll see the people working there spread far apart, wearing masks. The line, everyone is asked to be 6 feet away from each other. So if you go at the wrong time, it's a really long line and you might be waiting for a little bit. But you still get your mushrooms, and it still has like this sense of community. I think that it's important for anyone that's trying to get through this is like either you sell produce or you don't, and we're trying to sell. We're trying to get to the customer.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think something that I feel like has been part of the undertone of what you guys have done to not to pivot but to adjust to the current situation is really as a farm owner and a small business owner is taking that leadership and really trying to adapt to a problem that no one really could have anticipated. And maybe with that, I'd like to ask what kind of leadership would you recommend, what lessons of leadership would you recommend to other small business owners in the food and ag space?
yeah, I mean, I think that we'll all know after what works and what doesn't.
Hmm.
But I think that it takes you need to move quickly in this kind of a situation, um, because either you're going to do it or you're not, and the environment's going to change really quickly. And so if you see a opportunity to do something that doesn't obviously don't something that is like a financial risk, you should think about it a little,
Hmm.
maybe take a little bit of time doing that. But I think that you have to move quickly in this kind of thing. And honestly, like Adam's my co-founder, and our team, we benefited from moving quickly a lot, and we're kind of used to it. And so if something like this happens, then we can actually move and make something like this happen. I think a lot of like generally what a lot of people do is if their buyers drop off, then they're offloading the produce, either as a donation, which is the best, in my opinion, the best thing that you can do right now, or some people throw it away. I mean, I know that a lot of people are throwing away their produce right now, and we still donate. We always have donated. We work with Rethink. We work with a bunch of different entities right now for anything that isn't bought. But the big thing is getting your food out there, and so you shouldn't give up, and you shouldn't just go to the easiest way out. You should try to be creative and make something happen.
Well, I love that. I think there's a lot business owners can learn from that. And I think with that, Andrew, I want to thank you so much for your time. Can you let the people know where they can find yourself, Smallhold, on the interwebs or at the pop-ups?
Yeah, so if you Google Smallhold, you can probably find a lot of information about us, but we're at www.smallhold.com. The best place to find out about our direct to consumer and our delivery, and our pickup system is Instagram. That's where we're actually activating a lot of our community and testing a lot of this stuff. So definitely follow us at Smallhold. We're going to be posting a lot more about formalizing like how we've been dealing with our food safety protocol and how we deal honestly with this sort of temporary shift of selling to customers, because we kind of want to open that up to a lot of people. And so that'll likely be on our website, but we'll probably be posting on LinkedIn and just all the different social platforms in the next week or two.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to include those links in the profile or website below. And I think with that, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Wishing you and your team all the best during this craziness, and looking forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely. Hopefully in person.
Yes, indeed.